The air in the storage room was thick with the musty scent of old, forgotten things. Shelves lined the walls filled with boxes covered in years of dust, their contents long forgotten by everyone, except the room itself. Jessica worked at the antique shop for 6 months, and she had always avoided the storage room. It wasn't just the darkness or the oppressive silence that made her uneasy. It was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. But today, the shop owner, Mr. Hill, asked her to retrieve a specific box from the farthest corner, so she had no choice but to enter. As she stepped inside, the door creaked loudly before closing behind her with a heavy thud. The dim overhead light flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. The air felt colder here, and the silence was almost deafening. She navigated through the narrow aisles, her footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust on the concrete floor. Jessica's heart began to race as she moved deeper into the room. Every creak of the shelves and groan of the old wood made her flinch. Finally, she reached the back of the room where the box Mr. Hill described sat, covered in dust. It was an old wooden crate, its lid slightly ajar. A strange, almost metallic scent wafted from it, making her stomach churn. Hesitantly, she reached out and lifted the lid. Inside were old tools, rusted, sharp, and stained with something dark. Among them was a small, ornate box, its surface intricately carved with symbols she didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of her. She lifted the box out and opened it. Inside was a key, ancient and tarnished, along with a piece of folded parchment. Jessica unfolded the paper, revealing a map of the storage room, but something was off. The map showed another room, one that didn't exist on any plans she had seen. The marked room was supposed to be behind the wall where she now stood. Confused but intrigued, Jessica examined the wall more closely. It was old and cracked, the plaster peeling away in places. She ran her fingers along the surface, and to her surprise, one section gave way, revealing a hidden door. With a trembling hand, she inserted the key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a small, windowless chamber. The air inside was heavy, almost suffocating. At the center of the room was a single wooden chair, and on it sat a life-sized porcelain doll, dressed in Victorian-era clothing. The doll's face was eerily lifelike, with eyes that seemed to follow Jessica's every movement. A shiver ran down her spine as she stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. The doll was holding something in its porcelain hands, a letter addressed to her. Her hands shook as she took the letter and unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant but old, the ink faded. To the one who finds this, beware. This doll is cursed, bound by the spirit of the forgotten. She has waited for someone to free her, and now she has found you. Leave this place before she awakens, for once she does, there is no escape. As she read the last word, the air around her grew colder. She looked up at the doll, and to her horror, its eyes blinked. The doll's head slowly turned towards her, a sinister smile forming on its porcelain lips. Jessica dropped the letter and backed away, but the door slammed shut behind her. The light in the room flickered and went out, plunging her into darkness. She could hear the soft sound of porcelain feet tapping against the floor, moving closer. Desperate, she fumbled for the key, but it was gone. The darkness was complete now, and all she could hear was the sound of the doll, inching closer and closer. A cold hand touched her arm and she screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The last thing she felt was the icy grip tightening around her throat as the doll's laughter echoed in her ears. The next morning, Mr. Hill found the storage room door ajar, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. All that remained was the doll, sitting on the chair, its eyes now fixed on the doorway, waiting for the next to enter.